The theory of evolution also has a political dark side. In the 19th century, Ernst Haeckel was a very prominent figure among German Darwinists. Haeckel spoke of the ruthless, most bitter battle of each against the other, and did not believe the various human races were of a single species. He divided humanity into 4 genera of 12 species, some superior, others inferior. In his work, Haeckel professed the superiority of Germanic races. Jews, on the other hand, he saw as biologically unfit. Just 15 years after his death, his theories would resurface. Professor Heberer, a member of the Nazi Party, declared,
"This is an occasion to remember that Haeckel was a principal champion of eugenic measures. His proposals will be put into practice in the new Reich."
And so they were, at the cost of millions of lives of people these theories saw as inferior. The spiritual pioneers of this racial madness were never brought to justice. Professor Heberer, for instance, was a member of the Neo-Darwinians until the 1970s, and editor of the multi-volumed work, The Evolution of the Organism. The affinity between Nazi ideas on race and heredity and Darwinian theory is no coincidence. If Darwin's theory of selection were applied to humans, which is just what the Nazis did, it is only logical that those considered inferior be obliterated by means of forced selective breeding in order to advance those considered superior. Policies such as these were clearly not Darwin's intention. Just how ignorant he was about heredity is shown by the fact that he married his own cousin and had no objection to his younger sister doing the same. Unions that genetic scientists consider questionable. The Augustinian monastery at Brunn was the intellectual center of Moravia during the time the monk and natural scientist Gregor Mendel lived there. Unlike Darwin, who propagated the continuous evolution of the species, Mendel believed in the invariability of species and genera. He conducted experiments on tens of thousands of plants based on this premise and discovered that heredity adheres to clear, comprehensible rules, as this flowerbed indicates.
Die Gedanken von Gregor Mendel.
Gregor Mendel's ideas on heredity were diametrically opposed to Darwin's ideas on evolution. Mendel had already discovered the basic principle of the gene. But because Mendel's findings clashed so greatly with Darwin's theory of evolution, Mendel was not taken seriously.
Hatte zur Folge, dass Mendel nicht ernst genommen wurde.
Mendel rejected not only blending inheritance, but the entire theory of evolution as well.
The far-reaching significance of Gregor Mendel's discovery was not recognized in his lifetime. But he himself correctly assessed his work when he said, "My time has not yet come."
Die Wiederentdeckung
The rediscovery or declaration of Mendel's laws as the true and accurate laws of heredity, as opposed to the Darwinian ideas, was associated with a revolution at the beginning of the century. There were renewed attempts to suppress Mendel's laws. This started a sort of cultural struggle, primarily in England, and advocates of Mendel's laws emerged victorious because, quite simply, they could produce experiments and had better arguments.
Mendelschen Regeln vertrat, als Sieger vorging, weil sie einfach die Experimente vorlegen konnte und die besseren Argumente hatte.
In the 1930s, Darwinians in the West succeeded in incorporating Mendel's laws into what was referred to as synthetic theory. Communists, however, clung to the Darwinian view of the heredity of characteristics until well into the 1960s for ideological reasons. Soviet scientists suspected of acknowledging Mendel's findings as right were persecuted and murdered. Even today, chance plays a decisive role in Darwinian theory. It sees random positive changes in genetic material, mutations, as the source of all new genetic material. But what do mutations actually achieve?
Here we have the well-known mutant form of the Pisum sativum aphylla, the garden pea. If you examine the plants more closely, you'll notice that no leaves have grown here, only tendrils. Behind me, you can see the regular pea, with its normal small and medium-sized leaves and tendrils just at the ends. We hear a lot about positive mutation these days, but the question is, positive for whom? And positive in relation to what? We humans can profit a great deal from mutants like these. When such a tremendous number of tendrils grow, as we see here, you don't need to help them grow upright at all. They just sort of cling to each other. In the wild, however, this would be a loss. A pea like this has no chance of survival in the wild. And in principle, that's true of almost all cultivated plants.
While conducting research on plants at the Max Planck Institute, Dr. Lernig observed numerous mutations that resulted in some kind of detriment. These plants, for example, have no petals at all. And on this one, the blossoms are so severely deformed that bees can no longer get down into their tubular shape to pollinate them, which means that no seeds can form. Also, rainwater tends to collect in the elongated blossoms.
After conducting experiments on several hundred plants, we've concluded that the plants almost always rot prematurely and never achieve seed formation.
In recent years, Dr. Lernig has cultivated more than 1 million plants for research in mutation genetics. While this research has provided a great deal of useful results for science, there has been no evidence to corroborate the theory of evolution.
99.99% of all mutations are the result of interference with or loss of gene function. And this often causes confusion on one particular point, and that's this. The variability which we observe does not explain the origin of the gene needed to account for new species, new families, new orders, and new grades.
Die wir brauchen, neue Arten, neue Familien, neue Ordnungen, Klassen zu erklären.
Legions of flies have been sacrificed in the name of mutation research over the past decades. The result is consistent degeneration on a genetic level. Loss of eye color, wing distortion, and any number of other deformities. The true character of mutation is even more evident in the case of human beings, namely in the form of genetic function loss, which can lead to illness, in some cases severe. Positive mutation, that is the development of a new gene, is still unheard of.
The decisive question, which the theory of evolution has not yet answered satisfactorily, is this: how do completely new gene functions or completely new gene families develop? Or, to take it a step further, how did life originate in the first place? How do new species, new forms, new organisms evolve? It's all explained quite clearly in the textbooks, of course, but they fail to provide examples of entirely new gene functions evolving from mutations.
Geneticist Lernig is not alone in his assessment. One of the many who share his opinion is biologist and Nobel Prize winner Carl von Frisch, who said,
I am convinced that mutation and selection do not even remotely begin to explain the processes found in living nature.